Experts are confirming that the curve is starting to decline and stabilize. The number of infections is decreasing. We're confident that if we continue this way, we will overcome the worst phase. But we cannot lower our guard. We cannot go from a lockdown to liberalizing all economic activity. We need to do it gradually.
When will the easing of restrictions begin?
It's likely that if scientists confirm it, we might begin to relax some measures already by the end of this month.
Do you regret being too slow to have implemented a full lockdown, despite the fact that politicians in Lombardy, Chinese officials were advising it? Your critics would say you didn't listen to them.
Look, perfection doesn't exist in this world. I'm not so arrogant as to think that the Italian government was perfect. But going back, I would do the same again, and I'll tell you why. We have a completely different system from China. For us, to severely limit constitutional freedoms was a critical decision that we had to consider very carefully. If I had suggested a lockdown or a restriction of constitutional rights at the beginning, when there were the first clusters, people would have taken me for a madman.
But on the 25th of February, you said Italy is a safe country, maybe safer than others. Your foreign minister, 3 days later, said misleading information was doing more harm than the virus itself. Do you regret using language that some would say underestimated the severity of this crisis?
You won't find any statement from me that shows that I underestimated this emergency. We cannot be blamed for the fact that there was an outbreak within the country and we discovered it. Italy has always adopted measures highly effective and always timely.
Italy is at the moment performing roughly double the number of daily tests than the United Kingdom. What advice would you give Britain at the moment about testing?
First of all, let me send my sympathy to my friend Boris Johnson and to tell him,
don't give up, Boris.
For sure, performing tests means trying to bring the situation more under control. Without testing, it would mean having to cope with it in the dark.
The latest economic forecasts suggest that Italy's economy could contract by over 11%. Debt will soar. Italians will struggle to put food on the table. Italy is facing an economic collapse from this, isn't it?
Of course, we're talking of something that started as a health emergency but quickly turned into an economic and social emergency. It's testing the economic structure of Italy and other countries in Europe and the world. That's why we need an economic and social response at the European level.
Does Italy feel let down by the EU?
It's a big challenge to the existence of Europe and to the history of Europe. We're not just writing pages in the books of economics, we're writing pages in history books. This is a big appointment with history and we cannot miss it. Myself and other European leaders need to rise to the challenge. And there's no doubt that if our response isn't strong and unified, if Europe fails to come up with a monetary and financial policy adequate for the biggest challenge since the Second World War, for sure, not only Italians, but European citizens will be deeply disappointed.
If Europe does not rise to this challenge, would the European Union risk failing itself?
There is this risk. If we don't seize the opportunity to put new life into the European project, the risk is real. That's why I won't allow it to materialize. I want to banish it.
Playing a much louder part than Europe has been others, including Russia, for example, that has sent aid and medics to Italy. Is Russia using its aid as leverage for Italy to lift sanctions? Can you tell us now, does the Russian aid have strings attached?
The mere insinuation offends me deeply. It's an offense for the Italian government. To think that the aid that we're getting from Russia, China or other countries could influence the geopolitical stance of Italy is a big offense, and not just for me, also for Vladimir Putin, with whom I had a long phone call, who would never dream of using this as leverage in this moment when he gave a solidarity check to Italy. It was absolutely never asked, it was never even thought of.
Thousands of your compatriots have died, mortuaries are overflowing, families have been ripped apart. I wonder, when you go home at night and your quietest moments, how do you personally feel about what is happening here?
Questo sentimento di dolore
I feel pain for the gaping wound which Italians are enduring. It's a pain that's always with me because there are astonishing numbers. But behind the numbers are names and surnames, life stories, stories of broken families, and this causes me deep sadness. The Italian nation is suffering.